Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to do the mid-year book Freakout tag, where we basically take stock of all of the reading that we've been doing so far this year. So far in 2023 I have read 58 books, which, you know, is pretty good going. I feel like it's a slightly slower pace than previous years, but then I've had a little bit of an off and on year in terms of health as well, and just generally being in the mood to read. Not ideal, but certainly not a poor effort, I feel. So let's just get straight into these questions. Question number one is the best book that you've read so far in 2023, and for me by far that has to be Elizabeth of York by Alison Weir. This is the first book in her Tudor Rose series, which I read after thoroughly enjoying her 6 Tudor Queens series, review of which I have down below. This one reminded me so much of her installment on Jane Seymour. I feel like Elizabeth of York and Jane Seymour have similar kind of quiet personalities, but where Jane Seymour is kind of passive in her actions, the Elizabeth of York that Alison Weir portrays might be quieter, might be more gentle than the people who are around her with all of their political machinations, but she is not a silent character and she has a much more active role in the story. And it was just really great to get her take on the War of the Roses history, on the early Tudors, that you just don't get from the 6 Tudor Queens. Question number two is the best sequel that you've read so far in 2023. And to be honest with you, I've not read a whole lot of series this year, and so I've not read a whole lot of sequels. I think I've read 2 sequels so far this year, and the best of them had to be An Offer from a Gentleman, which is the 3rd book in the Bridgerton series, and even then saying that, that was a 3.5 star. It's definitely not up there in terms of Bridgerton books for me. So yeah, hopefully I get to read a few more good sequels this year. Question number 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to, and for me, going back to Alison Weir, it's definitely her new book on Henry VIII, Henry VIII, The Heart and the Crown, which came out I think in April or May, I want to say. Partially for this one because the rest of my 6 Tudor Queens and my Tudor Rose series are all in paperback. I think I am just waiting for that paperback to come out. And also I feel like I've kind of heard mixed reception to this one compared to her other books. People are saying it's just kind of going from event to event and wrapping up much too quickly. And that was kind of my fear with this one, is that there's so much history to cover with Henry VIII, that the fact that the book itself is only, I think, about 640 pages, something like that. It's a lot in terms of books, but I feel like in terms of books on Henry VIII, you need a lot longer. So I've got a bit of trepidation about this one, but I definitely do still want to read it. Question number 4 is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And this is one that I actually forgot to mention in my anticipated releases video, so I have to throw it in here. It is Emily Wilson's translation of the Iliad, which is finally coming out in September. Though yet another book where I'm feeling like I might have to wait until the paperback comes out for me to actually get it, but I don't know. I'm just, I really want to read this one because I loved her translation of the Odyssey. I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't include it in my anticipated releases video, because this is definitely the most excited I am about a book coming out this year. Question number 5 is biggest disappointment, and for me, unfortunately, that was Happy Place by Emily Wilson. This was not like the worst book that I read this year, but in terms of my expectations and then how it delivered, definitely the biggest disappointment. Last year, one of my favourite books that I read was You and Me on Vacation, and so I was kind of expecting something similar, but unfortunately I do find Emily Henry to be kind of hit or miss for me. And it's never misses as in like 2 or 1 star books. It's that I'm going from like 5 stars with You and Me on Vacation to 3 stars with Happy Place and Beach Read, and I just never know what I'm going to get. Question number 6 is biggest surprise. I don't know if I've had books that have really shocked me in terms of how much I like them. I feel like I'm at a point now where most of the stuff that I read, I get a good sense that I'm going to like it. I feel like I know my taste in books fairly well. But in terms of being surprised at how much I liked it, it's definitely got to go to Once Upon a Tome by Oliver Darkshire, which is his memoir recounting his experience working at Sotheran's Bookshop, which is one of the oldest antiquarian bookshops in London. And I think I was just taken aback by how humorous his tone is. It's a really deeply funny memoir. I feel like we've all had a really deeply sarcastic English teacher, or, you know, insert subject here, but for me it was an English teacher who had just a deadpan sense of humour, just very dry tone, and this is Oliver Darkshire's humour very distinctly in this book, and I absolutely loved it. Also because this is a book that I didn't actually pick up for myself, it was one that my parents just got for me on a whim. I'd never heard of it before, so even though from the subject matter I expected to like it, because I'd never heard of it before, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and so to enjoy it quite so much as I did was just a really lovely surprise. Question number 7 is favourite new author, either debut or new to me. In terms of authors where I've read multiple of their books this year, it's actually been previous authors who I already knew that I loved the work from, people like Taylor Jenkins Reid or Ali Hazelwood. So I think in terms of my new favourite authors, both of these that I'm going to be including are being included because I just love their sense of humour. Firstly, Alice Loxton, who wrote Uproar, review of which is down below, and then obviously Oliver Darkshire, like I say, absolutely fantastically funny writer. Definitely recommend both of their books, and I'll look forward to reading anything else that they bring out. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush, a question which I will staunchly defend. However, this year I feel like even though I've been reading quite a lot of romance books, I don't really have any like very obvious crushes that have come out of it. I think the closest I've come to a book crush this year is Marcus from Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade, but otherwise nobody who's really been tugging at my heartstrings, I'm afraid. Strangely, there's just not been any standout characters for me. I must be forgetting somebody. There must have been a point where I was reading and I was like, I love this person, but it just wasn't coming to mind, I'm afraid. I feel like I'm being really disappointing with this mid-year book Freakout tag, because question number 10, which is book that made you cry, once again, I don't have an answer for this one. Nothing has made me cry this year. Films and TV have made me cry. I'm thinking about Netflix's Queen Charlotte, the last scene of that. Absolutely like floored every time I watch that. Weeping buckets. But in terms of books, I've not really had anything that's really got me upset. Though once again, question 11, book that made me happy, going back to Uproar and Once Upon a Tome. Both of those made me actually laugh out loud whilst I was reading them, which is always delightful. Question number 12 is the most beautiful book that you have bought or received this year. I have 2, and they are actually both Greek myth retellings. I think the budget for books is just generally going to these Greek myth retellings. How stunning are these? So here we have Clytemnestra by Costanza Cassetti, just absolutely gorgeous, beautiful end papers. And then Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. Jennifer Saint always gets the most gorgeous covers. Then finally, question 13 is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Originally, when I started planning this video, I still had to read The Secrets of Heartwood Hall by Katie Lumsden, which is a book that I was really desperate to read, but at the same time kind of was putting it off. But actually this past week, I've managed to read it and absolutely loved it. And I feel like there's been nothing that I've currently got on my TBR that is quite as pressing. So I think I'm just going to generally say the last 20 books on my TBR, because yes, at current moment of filming, I've only got 20 books left on my TBR. I think I started the year with something like 64, so for me that is an incredible achievement. And even though I'm definitely going to buy books throughout the rest of the year, I would really love it if the current ones that I have would be read by December. That would just make me feel really good. So there we go, that is my mid-year book Freakout tag. Do let me know your answers to any of these questions, and particularly I would love to hear about any books that you've read so far this year that are your favourites and you'd really recommend. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.